It's on them. Yes, Chairman, we're good to go now.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome everybody to this evening's strategy group meeting. Just for housekeeping, if you need to raise an issue, can you please use the blue hand? Those of you that should be able to do that now. If you can't use the blue hand for some reason, if you just raise your hand to the screen, we will try to take note of that, and we'll try and do it in order as people want to speak, and I will control that on this location. I will mute everyone. That just stops any sort of feedback and allows us to hear a little bit clearer. So please remember to unmute yourself when it comes to speaking. Okay, right, well, we'll start the meeting now. So are there any, first of all, minutes of the last meeting? Can we confirm that the minutes are accurate, and are you happy for them to be signed at some point in the future? Tony?
Chairman, can we just do a roll call, please?
Oh, yes, so apologies, yeah, sorry. I was a little bit too keen there.
So,
So
we're going to do the feedback.
Okay, so if you, all members, if you could just confirm that you can see and hear, please. So Councillor Richard Auger.
yes, I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Adam Brown. Councillor Adam Brown.
He seems to have dropped out.
He's dropped out. I'll carry on for now. Councillor Alan Chandler.
Yes to both.
Councillor Cribbin.
Yes to both.
Councillor Guildford.
Yes to both.
Councillor Hills.
Yes.
Councillor Smith.
All good.
Councillor James. Councillor James.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And Councillor Lomax. Oh, she's on mute. Sorry. Okay, I think you, yeah. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah.
Yes, on both, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Randall.
Yes, on both.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Adam Brown, can you see and hear us?
I can, thank you. Yes, I'm not sure what's wrong with my connection here, but hopefully the problems will pass.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just say, Councillor Ritchie is trying to join us, but he's like me. He didn't find the Zoom information on the papers where we thought it was. So I've just messaged him to say you sent an email, Beverly.
Yep.
I think Councillor Ritchie's now. Can we confirm, Jevely, he's okay to go?
Councillor Ritchie, can you see and hear us? You're on mute, Councillor Ritchie.
Does that do the job?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, right. Tony, we good to go now then, please?
Oh, where's this raised hand?
All right, once again,
Yes,
I'm going to
Chairman,
mute everyone just to stop any feedback. So please just be prepared to unmute yourself if you need to speak, and use the green hand, the blue hand, not the green hand. Okay, back to agenda point 1, the minutes. Are we happy for the minutes to be signed at some point in the future as being accurate? Any concerns or worries? Please let me know now. Okay, I take that as accepting them. Thank you very much. Apologies for absence, please, Jevely.
Councillor Steve Osborne.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. If you have any disclosable interest at any point, either now or during the meeting, you feel that you do, please identify those to ensure integrity of yourselves and of this process. Anyone wish to disclose an interest? Councillor Wendy Randall, you have your hand raised. You can unmute yourself.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, there was, I don't know if I need to declare an interest, but I will anyway. It's the Southwark Community Centre, only that it was offered to the town council, and obviously I do sit on the town council, so I've seen different reports. And the other one, which I don't know when's appropriate to say, but on item 6.3, the secondary school consultation responses, I'm going to ask if that item can be withdrawn on the agenda, but I don't know if I do it now and state the reasons why, or if I wait until it comes to that item.
Tony, can you advise on procedure, please, with regard to, first of all, if you're happy for Councillor Randall to remain with the Southwark Community Centre, and also with regard to the withdrawal of the secondary school item?
Chairman, in respect of the interest for Southbrook Community Centre, that's fine. There's no issue there. That's Councillor Randall has declared her position. Excuse me. In regards of withdrawing something from the agenda, Chairman, that would be something for you and the committee to consider. So you could either do that
with a motion and then either defeat, or how's that done?
Yes, as it stands, the item is on the agenda. I think Councillor Randall would need to offer a motion at, when you get to that point on the agenda.
Okay. Well, what we'll do with Councillor Randall, if you're happy with that, when we get to that item, you can propose, put a motion forward, have a seconder, and then we can vote on whether it's withdrawn or not. You happy with that?
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. All right. Okay, moving into the business of the evening. Item 4. Item 4 is the annual report on council-linked entities. Whilst Strategy Group does not normally receive information reports, it's become established practice following the endorsement of the Corporate Governance Committee in January of 2018 to provide an annual update on the performance of council-linked entities to Strategy Group. The report is before you. You've received it. It's a resolved matter. Does anyone wish to ask any questions, or are you happy to note the said report? And Wendy Randall, please. Thank you. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was
Sorry, Councillor Randall, you muted again.
sorry, missed the
That's it.
button.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it was just regarding the Norse contract, where it just said that we made a loss, and I was just wondering if that was just, you know, teething problems, or are we expected to continue make a loss?
Okay, can we have an officer to respond to that, please? Who would like to do that?
Shall I respond, Chairman?
Yes, please, Simon, thank you.
The simple answer, I think, is that you can treat it as teething problems. There were a number of issues during the year which have been worked through, some of which are mentioned in the report. Currently, the management accounts for Daventry North suggest the company should be profitable this year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Lomax.
Thank you, Chairman. There were just 3 points. First of all, I think North is to be congratulated on the way they've kept things going during the COVID period. I think there have been relatively few hiccups, and I think they've done extremely well. 2 other things that I wanted to say about it. While I accept that obviously these things do fluctuate, on page 6, 4.2.2 under performance, I just wondered what is approximately the high percentage, which is mentioned on line 3 of the second paragraph. And the other things I wanted to say was at the very end of 4.2.2, and there's mention of the company providing grounds maintenance to Daventry Town Council. Of course, they are also providing services to some parish councils.
Okay, thank you. Can we have an answer to Councillor Lomax's points, please? Who wishes to do that? Looking for an officer there, or...
Lots came with none.
Okay, what's the current figure, Simon? I know what past figures are, but it might be worth mentioning the current figure as well.
We're hovering around the sort of 60% mark.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor
Oh,
Ellmans?
I didn't hear. I'm sorry. Could it be repeated?
60%. Around the 60% mark. I
Thank
think.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's that. Thank you very much. If there is no further questions, I'd like to then, are we happy to note the report? If you do so, please raise the right hand. Raise the right hand. A hand. Okay, thank you. So resolved item. Councillor Wendy Randall. Oh, you.
Sorry, I was doing my voting hand. I
Oh,
thought
right.
we were
Okay,
doing it by
that's
that way.
recording now. We're going to do it physically with the hand. That's great. Okay, moving on to community culture and leisure issues. Councillor Hills, public spaces protection order, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. Yeah, public spaces protection order. Basically, this replaces the current protection order, which runs out October this year, with the new one taking place from the 1st of November. The recommendations are there before you, and I don't propose to run through them all because they're there and you can see them and read them. But as you will see, if you refer to page 19, Appendix 1, the details of the consultation carried out shows that there was an overwhelming support for the proposals, which enhances and adds value to the current protection order. Members, I ask for your support on this so that we can accept the recommendations, which adds to the public support for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. Yeah, just a question on the consultation on question 9. So that's page 25. It does state on there, one of the questions was to enable us to have more opportunity to successfully enforce the requirements of the PSPO and any new PSPO made following this consultation. We are proposing that we supplement the council's resources by authorising appropriate individuals from the town council. So does that mean that you're giving the town council money, well, maybe towards the PCSO that may be enforcing those, or because it doesn't actually, I couldn't see actually anything in the report. It was just in that question.
Councillor Hills.
I'm not 100% sure on that myself, but I do know that if anybody is going to take part in this, that training will be given if required.
Councillor, I'm sorry, Maria, you can answer that question, please. Thank you.
Yeah, to clarify, that's to do with delegating people who are able to use the powers that we get when we have this PSPO. So this would be about giving the town council in this case, or a police officer or a trained volunteer, the powers to be able to do this. This isn't about paying anybody. This is about saying somebody's willing and able and trained and capable of enforcing some of these powers and allowing them to do it. So no, it wouldn't be paying the town council to do it. This would be if the town council or some other willing volunteer or organisation wanted to enforce these powers, that we would be able to delegate a suitably authorised trained person to do just that.
Okay, thank you. Wendy, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, I do, because if nobody wants to go on any of the training then, which they might have to fund themselves and may not be in a budget or whatever, that means that we'd have no one to enforce it.
Maria?
Is that correct?
If I can clarify, we've been working really well with the town council over many years. Previous town rangers and the PCSOs come on our training through the various courses we provide and that we do countywide. We have the barrister service that we have come in, the Go provided your training, provides on operational training. The town council that are able to access all that, so they don't have to pay for the training. We would provide them with the training. If we have willing people who want to do enforcement, then we will provide the training for them, and when they're suitably qualified and able, we can delegate powers to them if they so wish.
Yeah, if I just come in on that, Chairman, I was just going to say that the training provided, they will not be required to pay. So, I mean, it's up to them. If they want to do it, they will be given the training free of charge.
Yeah, I think we get the drift of that. Thank you very much. Councillor Jonathan Harris, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification on this particular report. I may have missed it, but I can't actually see how many respondees there were. So I just wanted a clarification. Clearly, it is an overwhelming, strongly agree, but I couldn't see anywhere how many people actually responded.
Okay, do we have that ready to hand, Maria?
I'll come back. It is in the report. I'll just find the relevant reference and come back to you later if you like, Chairman.
Okay, yeah, we'll before we leave this item, we'll come back to you. Councillor Ken Ritchie, please.
Thank you, Chair. My concern that runs through most of this is, where is there any provision for redress if somebody decides, well, they haven't been, the challenge has not been reasonable? Who actually decides that behaviour is antisocial? Of course, there is antisocial behaviour already that that falls within existing legislation. But what about other things? There are issues about if an inappropriate choice of songs in inappropriate locations. Who's going to decide whether a song from a busker is inappropriate? There are the references to people, young people riding around in bikes in large groups, in car parks and pavements, with a detriment effect on other users. Who actually decides that there is a detrimental effect? If somebody is stole, suppose you have a young person, perhaps cycling around on the area down where the open air swimming pool used to be, and they're told to get off their bike. Are they allowed to cycle home to, Wordsworth Road or the Grange or wherever, whichever other bit of Daventry they come from? I just feel that this all sounds exceptionally authoritarian.
Councillor Ritchie, we get your point. Have we got an answer for that, either with regard to the discretion of or the assessment of the person given the ticket, and also presumably is there an appeals process? Somebody said that they weren't doing the allegation. Maria, can you answer those questions, please?
Yeah, happy to do so. The Environmental Protection Team have got decades and decades of experience of exactly this type of activity between them all. And there is essentially a multiple stage process. Sometimes you'll get in a report from an individual and you're acting on that. Sometimes you're dealing, an officer is witnessing something themselves. But in all cases, we're not issuing fixed penalty notices unless we're absolutely satisfied that it's reasonable to do so. And there is effectively an appeal process that every time we issue a fixed penalty notice for littering, if there's any doubt as to the veracity of the report from somebody or whatever else, then we are not going to be unreasonable. That's why you councillors do not hear from members of the public for being treated unfairly all the time. That's why 90+% of the fixed penalty notices we issued are paid without question, because people do that and we don't get many repeat offences. That's why we do the training.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mark Wesley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, is there any information on the effectiveness of these orders from the last year? Councillor Ritchie had worries about rights to appeal. Has anyone actually been, well, can I call it prosecuted, or has anything actually happened against these existing items so far?
Okay, looks like Maria again, please.
With regard to this particular PCSO, PSPO, there have not been any prosecutions in this year or in recent years. No. It's not been one. Certainly, we have got prosecutions for the other ones that we do fixed penalty notices. I think it might be better if I come back to you after the meeting, Chairman, to clarify how many people, because I'm sure it was in here because we talked about it at the meeting, but I can confirm exactly how many people took part in the survey. Chairman, unless somebody else has come across it.
If you could do that by email, that's quite acceptable, as long as the question is answered to the council that raised it, but it'd probably be good for all strategy groups to receive that. Thank you. Councillor Joe Guilford.
My comment was more about future proofing, because we're making these decisions and the policies here, and we've been very good at Daventry at being the facilitator for these things to happen in the community, and there's been the training courses that have been run by DDC. But going forward in the future, we're passing something here that will be successful if it's got in-house training supported. Will that follow through to the unitary? Or is it something that may stop in the future? It's a crystal ball, I don't know, but it's about future proofing, if you know, see the principle I'm trying to get at.
Okay, Ray, do you want to talk about the obviously the transition to unitary and these policies?
It is the intention that this operation, everything will continue on day one, on vesting day, and this policy will carry forward into West Northamptonshire Council. That's how it works. So it is our intention this will carry on for the 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's good question, Joe, but I think the reality is it will be a new authority, and they will decide on how they implement their training, how they implement their policies. But certainly it sounds like that these policies have been put forward as going forward. Councillor Hills, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I was just going to say my impression has always been that this will be carried forward into the unitary, and then they will make decisions on this in the future. The previous public spaces protection order, there wasn't any prosecutions. It worked very well, and that's why we didn't hear a lot about it. And this, to me, it enhances the value. It gives the members of the public, no matter how many voted or appeared in the consultation, it gives the members of the public that little bit extra that they have asked for. And when we go back to the legal constitutional part of it, on 5.3, it says protection order, that activities carried on in a public place are having a detrimental effect on the quality of life of those in the locality. And that is up to the people who are looking to enforce this. But I'm sure it will be done in a correct way. The training will be given free of charge, as I say, and I'm sure that whether it's a PCSO or a police officer or a member of either the town council or the district council, they will act in the right way.
Thank you. I think as long as Daventry District is about, this policy will continue with its figure. Colin, a last point then, please, and we'll move on from this. Thank you.
Chair, did you invite me to speak? Sorry.
I did. You're the last speaker on this.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's you said Colin. Sorry, Chair. I wanted to raise a question related to this. I may have raised it last time, actually. Partly this is about sort of modes of transport. Could we have a word about what is being done or what can be done further in relation to antisocial behaviour around loud cars? I seem to see that we're having a lot of very loud exhausts in the town at the moment, and folks I've spoken to getting quite tired of this. Is there anything extra we can do either in this area or to engage police officers about? I think it's been outrageous levels of noise over the summer. I'm sure I'm not the only one, particularly as a town ward member, to express this, and I'd seek any views on that from officers, please.
Well, first of all, that comes under common use, which is a policing matter. I'm not too sure whether that can be further prosecuted with other powers. Maria, any thoughts on that?
No, noise from the road tends to not be within the general noise powers that we've got, but there are some exceptions to that. But we, as usual, we would encourage people who are experiencing nuisance to report it, and then we can look into each case on its merits.
I think that's the challenge, isn't it? It can be difficult to locate the vehicles, but a lot of the sort of racing vehicles. Okay, I'll take it outside this. I appreciate it doesn't relate to that, but I wanted some word in it. Thank you.
Colin, Councillor Morgan, I suggest that you work with the beat officer, the beat sergeant. That's certainly a policing issue.
I think anybody who lives in the town probably experiences this on a regular
basis. We're going to move on from this point now. So those of us that would like to, sorry, over to you, Alan, for your final point, and then we will move on. Councillor Hills?
No, I think I've said everything that I need to say. I think we should support this and support the members of the public who've made these, who notified us of the problems.
Okay, if you're happy to recommend this to council, please do so. Indicate, raised hand. Okay. Any against? And any abstentions? Okay, that's one abstention. Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Okay, Councillor James, transport strategy, please, consultations.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks approval for a consultation response to England's economic heartland on its draft transport strategy and proposals for statutory status and the Department of Transport's consultation on changes to the Highway Code. It's a resolved matter, and you'll see there are two items there, two resolutions there. I'll run through this as quickly as I can, picking bits out, and I'll leave it to members who have had notice of this to look at the necessary consultation responses if they so wish. But as an introduction, a number of transport-related consultations are underway, all of which have the potential to affect Daventry District and West Northamptonshire. It's therefore proposed responses should be made to each of them. The consultations are on EEH, England's Economic Heartland's draft transport strategy, EEH's integrated sustainability appraisal, EEH proposals for establishing a statutory subnational transport body known as an STB, and finally a cycling and walking investment strategy safety review consultation on the review of the Highway Code. On page 30 of the report, you'll see a diagram or a map, a plan, showing the extent of England's economic heartland. And you'll see it stretches from the northern tip of Cambridgeshire right down to Swindon, and includes counties like, well, it includes Peterborough, Cambridgeshire, Northamptonshire, Bedford, Milton Keynes, Central Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire. So it's quite an extensive area, and there are related economic activities throughout that particular region. So we sort of glove in a little bit, dovetail in. Now, first of all, what England's economic heartlands is going to do is to work towards and establishing as a statutory subnational transport body as provided in the Local Transport Act 2008. The statutory STB has a range of roles, but the core of it is essentially to prepare a transport strategy for its area. There are a lot of S's in this report, which makes it a little bit difficult. On page 31, the draft transport strategy is drawn from the outline transport strategy and the consultation responses to that, including from this council, it sets out a vision and key principles as follows. Vision to realise sustainable growth opportunities and improve the quality of life and well-being for Heartland residents and businesses by harnessing the region's globally renowned centres of innovation to unlock a world-class decarbonised transport system. And the key principles there, which accord with the principles of this district council on certain matters, are achieving a net zero carbon emissions from transport no later than 2050, improving the quality of life and well-being through an inclusive transport system accessible to all, which emphasises sustainable and active travel, supporting the regional economy by connecting people and businesses to markets and opportunities, and ensuring that the Heartland works for the UK by enabling the efficient movement of people and goods through the region and to and from international gateways. Daventry is identified as both an area of significant change and an area of potential. Northampton as both a regional significant hub, which it is, and an area of potential. The Riverside Investment Zone is singled out as an area of economic potential. And it's arguable that given its scale, Durft, our Durft, should also be specifically identified. The proposed response does suggest that. The draft strategy describes its purpose as to support the delivery of the region's shared ambition with government of enabling the region to realise its economic potential with an ambition of a 70% increase in gross value added by 2050, delivering that growth in a way that is sustainable for the long term and achieves environmental net gain with our transport system net zero carbon no later than 2050. And designing a transport system tailored to meet the needs of its users, targeting behavioural preferences and responding to the needs of their individual lifestyles now and in the future. Item 4.3 there is the sustainability appraisal, which sets out things like the strategic environmental assessment, the health impact assessment, habitats regulations assessment, equalities impact assessment, and community safety assessment. And it sets out a number of sustainability objectives. Population inequalities, which hopefully includes reference to rural issues, economy, health, community safety, biodiversity, natural capital and economic service, ecosystem services, landscape and townscape, historic environment, water environment, air quality, climate change, greenhouse gases. Item 4.4 then is the proposals for a statutory subnational transport body. EEH's proposal for a statutory STB suggests that a statutory body would be better able to provide the kind of long-term context major transport infrastructure requires, and more likely to secure funding for that infrastructure. Both of these propositions seem reasonable, and an STB also provides a powerful way to articulate local needs and aspirations in a form which government would need to have regard to. Item 4.5, which is very important, government walking and cycling policy known as gear change. The government has just published a new policy statement on walking and cycling, active travel, entitled Gear Change, a bold new vision for walking and cycling. Sets out a number of commitments, including an increase in funding measures to ensure a cycle infrastructure is built to suitable standards. The document sets out reasonableness for promoting active travel, including improvements to physical and mental health, reduced carbon emissions, and a greater efficiency in the use of road space. The document, I'll move on a little bit, on page 34, the document proposes to fund up to 12 local authority areas to create mini Hollands, places where intensive transformational spending on their roads and streetscapes to make them over time as cycle and pedestrian friendly as their Dutch equivalents. Given the Council's policies on relevant subjects, as set out in our corporate strategic plan and its declaration of climate emergency, it is suggested it would be appropriate to encourage Northamptonshire County Council, soon to be West Northamptonshire Council, to prepare for, and when the opportunity arises, to bid for this funding. Moving on, there are highway code changes. There are 3 key changes that are proposed through the consultation: introducing a hierarchy of road users, which ensures that those road users who can do the greatest harm have the greatest responsibility to reduce the danger or threat they may pose to others. Clarifying existing rules on pedestrian priority on pavements, and that drivers and riders should give way to pedestrians crossing or waiting to cross a road. Establishing guidance on safe passing distances and speeds when overtaking cyclists or horse riders, and ensuring that they have priority at junctions when travelling straight ahead. The principles the government is seeking to pursue appear sound and consistent with what I think our own district would like. So there you have it. Those are the proposals, and the resolution to be adopted tonight. The proposed responses to the following consultations are approved. A, England's Economic Heartland, EEH, draft transport strategy, which is set out in Appendix 1. The integrated sustainability appraisal to the EEH draft transport strategy, set out in Appendix 2. C, EEH proposals for a statutory subnational transport body, set out in Appendix 3. D, Department for Transport proposals for highway code changes, set out in Appendix 4. And secondly, that in relation to the government's new walking and cycling policy, gear change, A, support is given to the principle of local residents being allowed to require the closure of rat runs. Now, we're all familiar with rat runs, and I suspect when we become part of West Northamptonshire Council, we shall see that Northampton in particular has loads of rat runs there, which I'm sure many residents would like something done about. B, item 2B, is Northamptonshire County Council, West Northamptonshire Council, as appropriate, be encouraged to pursue Mini Holland funding for West Northamptonshire. So there you have it, Chair. It's not a controversial document. It's there that could assist us, help us develop in a safe and sustainable way. And I recommend it to Strategy Group.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Harris, you wish to say something?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Very briefly, I agree there's a lot of stuff within this document that is commendable and will have positive impacts on the environment. I have one question in particular. I appreciate it's a consultation document. It's actually on page 40, item 12. I wonder if I would be able to get again a little bit more clarification where it states the council strongly supports this approach, particularly in regards to item 1. That's the Northern Arc connecting Oxfordshire, Northamptonshire and Peterborough. And it says there are potentially significant economic gains from better connectivity. Those gains aren't evident there. Clearly that pathway will come right across the top of Northamptonshire. I wonder if anyone could clarify as to what the meaning is behind those economic gains.
James?
Well, if, for example, if you're considering Kettering, the old A43, it's a ghastly road to go along at any one time. Also, the road going on then to Peterborough is not all that great either. there are bound to be gains by having better connectivity between Kettering and Northampton. In other words, to deal with that A43, for example, that's one possibility, and better opportunities for connecting Peterborough, better road access, which would cut down on a lot of the clogging up and the carbon emissions. But of course, there are other ways of improving connectivity too, and they would have to be considered. So they would benefit the district's residents, because there was a period of time, of course, when people from Daventry here were having to go over to Kettering Hospital for various therapy work, so at hospital therapy treatments. So a better connectivity would avoid that unnecessary, in some cases, road travel altogether.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Lomax.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, some slightly minor points, I suppose. Working backwards on Appendix 1, item 35. I'm glad to see mention of Midland Connect and working with Midland Connect. I'm rather sorry that it's not rather stronger than encouraged, but I suppose this is a sort of word that has to be used in this context. It is such a big problem, and Midland Connect is a very obvious partner to work with on it. The other two comments that I wanted to make were in relation to item 29 and 33 on pages 44 and 45. A road which isn't mentioned at all is the A5. And I think it's important to mention it because, of course, it could be said, well, the M1 substitutes for, well, the A5 substitutes for the M1 whenever there is a problem on the M1. That's where the traffic goes to. And of course, it does go all the way down through Milton Keynes and beyond to London. So I think it would be important to include it in those sections. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll let you round up at the end, David, Councillor James, Councillor Wesley, and then we will move to close this item. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for letting me speak again, Chair. And I know this is a little bit parochial for me, but I do ride with Daventry Cycling Club, and I do welcome the new rules or the new suggested rules on the Highway Code. Just looking at our responses on page 55, Rule 77 would be better titled fast roads, which is speed rather than volume of traffic which poses most risk. My personal experience is it's speed and volume of traffic which does pose the risk. I just wondered how we came up with that response. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor James, do you want to tidy it up and then we'll go to resolving the item.
Yes, I'll try to find that one that Councillor Wesley was talking about. Oh, I see. Rule 77 would be better titled fast roads. It is speed rather than the volume of traffic which poses most of the risk. I suspect there's an element of truth in that. It's got to be speed. Speed kills, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Is there any more? You are actually right. It is speed is the biggest killer in fatal road accidents. But
yeah. No,
inappropriate speed.
I commend it to the group because it is consistent with most of the objectives that we have and principles, really, particularly regarding sustainability of the environment and so on and so forth. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor James. Those of us that are happy to resolve this item, please do so by the raised hand. Good. Are there any opposed to it? Any abstentions from it? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on then, please, Councillor James, to your second item, Southbrook Community Centre.
Yes, this report seeks the approval for the arrangements for the future use of Southbrook Community Centre. Members will recall that we did offer 3 community centres to be transferred to Daventry Town Council this summer. But as the Town Council is taking on a number of transfers from us in other directions, they felt that they were unable to consider taking them on at this particular time, which then leaves us with Southbrook, Mayfield Park, and of course the one on Drayton, Nenhall, back in our charge. Now, what has happened is this: with the outbreak of the, well, first of all, I'll say we've owned this since it was built in 1970, and it's leased to the Southbrook Community Association. But the association feels that it can't continue due to the effects of COVID-19, which has had a detrimental effect on its main occupant, Happy Faces, and that they want to dissolve and quit the premises. Their lease doesn't really end until the end of next year, but in the circumstances, we've decided to accept an early surrender of the lease so that they can quit immediately owing to their financial position. Happy Faces have had use of the building for a long time and have provided a vast majority of the income that the community association needed to meet its running costs. Also, the community association was faced with a bill from Northamptonshire County Council, which has added to its financial problems. Happy Faces has given up because because of COVID-19, it can only have about half the building that it previously had, effectively half the building, and their income wouldn't justify them continually. Also, I think one of the people behind Happy Faces was also ill. Was also ill at the time. So we've accepted a surrender of the lease, and that's effective from the 31st of August 2020. Now, clearly, as a council, we would like another community association to form and take over the building. And efforts have been pursued to try and get a new community association in being. If that doesn't happen, of course, then we'll have to look for some other form of community group so that it is used for community purposes. At the moment, although it looks promising that we might do that, there are some doubts about it, and it's not yet borne fruit, as it says there. So what we've decided is this: if the work to establish a new form of community group does succeed, we would grant them a lease of up to 7 years at a peppercorn rent, provided they undertake to keep the building in repair, responsibility for maintenance, and also insure the building. That would be the best solution if we're unable to get another community association. If this approach hasn't borne fruit by 1st of October 2020, then of course we will have to do an exercise to seek proposals for how the building could be run in the best interests of the community. That assessment would be jointly undertaken by the Council's Property and Community Development Officers. And also, we would, in the event of a suitable proposition coming forward, again, provide a lease of up to 7 years at no real rent, effectively, to an occupying group who would have to undertake responsibility for the building's repair, maintenance, and insurance. Finally, should no acceptable community offers be received by the 1st of January 2021, the building should be marketed for occupation on a commercial basis. So there are three possibilities there. The ideal one would be if we could get another community association, but experience shows that lots of the people that run these community associations, after a while, they disappear, no longer wish to take on that responsibility. Now, Councillor Hill's portfolio overlaps mine a little bit, and I'm sure he would, having been involved with this association for many, many years and understands some of the issues there, if not all of them, I'm sure he would like to say a word. And I hope, Chairman, that you'll give Councillor Hills the opportunity to have an input into this debate. Finally, there are financial implications of leaving the building empty. First of all, there are the financial implications regarding business rates, non-domestic rates. At the moment, that's charged at a rate of about £4,141 a year. Now, it may be in the interim period that the DDC might use the building for a very short period of time for promotional activities. Of that, I have no further information at this time. And if we were to do that, of course, we would lose the empty property rate exemption. So there would be a cost to us of doing that. Probably not a lot of money, but nevertheless, there would be a cost. Leaving the building empty, of course, we would still be stuck with utility costs, and we would run the risk of having repairs and, of course, our old foe, vandalism. We would run that risk too. So it is quite serious from that point of view. We need to get an occupant in that building. Thank you, Chairman. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I would like to go to Alan Hills. Can you just, if you want to support or say anything with regard to this paper? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Southbrook Community Centre, it's on obviously the Southbrook estate, which is classed as an area of deprivation. I don't believe it's as bad as it's sometimes made out to be, and I've seen it improve over the years. But the community centre was the hub of the area. Happy Faces, yes, was one that provided a lot of their funding, but they also did a lot of other things. I worked with them when they run the Fate on the Field. They also worked with them on organising outside picnics and trips away for some of the vulnerable families. So there was a lot of other things that went on. So it's very sad to see the situation that has come about, one due to the virus, another due to the account that the county council sent, and the fact that they haven't been able to come back and use it as it was at one time. But whilst this item comes under the economic portfolio, my interests are that I've had this as part of my ward, Hill Ward. Plus, also it involves my community portfolio, which I've supported the community centre since I was first elected. And I would ask you all of you to support the advice. And just to, I know I'm repeating, but the centre's first offered for community groups on a peppercorn rent, and if unsuccessful, would then be offered for commercial use. Basically, we as a council have and are committed to engaging with residents, any volunteers, to keep this as a community asset, whether as a community centre or perhaps in a different form. If not, we then have to look at commercials. Grant funding would be available, but at the same time, we as a council, we have to remember that we have to get the best value for any of our assets. it's something that we've working, the officers and other members, and including David, have been working very hard on. And I believe that together with officers and the economic portfolio, all of us will be trying to reach a satisfactory outcome. But at the moment, I feel this is the best course that we can offer to try to get things moving. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Colin Morgan, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's obviously always sad to see when these situations occur, but it does strike me as being a pragmatic course of action. However, there's a question I wanted to ask with regards to the timelines. Given that we're already on the 10th of September, and we're meeting this evening, of course, to discuss this, is the 1st of October an appropriate duration? Does it give enough time to fulfill the objectives proposed approach number 2? And thirdly, with the third option on the 1st of January, is that enough time, given where we are? So I wonder if those constraints of time are a bit too ambitious. The second question I wanted to raise was about the commercial use. I think if I've understood it correctly, that's for a rental basis and not as a sale of the property. So could we discuss those things, please, or have answers? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, let's go to that first. Councillor James, do you want to respond to those 2 issues, please?
Well, I think it is an urgent matter, really. We need to minimise our liability and get something done immediately. If a person is genuinely interested in forming a community association or community group, then of course there's plenty of time for them to come to a decision on that. I think the worst thing that could happen is that we delay it and we head into the winter, we incur costs and so on and so forth, and that we still get nowhere nearer. Is to put a little bit of pressure on those that might tentatively have an interest to declare their full intention and interest. So I'm not unhappy about that time scale.
If I may come in, Chair, I totally agree with what David has said. Yes, we do need to allow time for people to come forward, but at the same time, the longer you leave any empty building, the quicker it becomes vandalised. And one thing I would hate to see that happen to the building itself. So I think we've set a timeline that is achievable. It doesn't mean to say that if somebody came along at the last minute or professed an interest and said, could we have a bit more time, that we wouldn't negotiate with them, because everything is open on this. We are determined to try and get something to replace this. And so we have to be flexible on this. But I think to set a timeline is the right steer at the moment.
Thank you. Second point that Colin raised, David, Councillor James.
Could Colin repeat that second point? I didn't quite catch it.
Colin, do you want to repeat it, please?
Yeah, thank you. I'm surprised by our lack of formality this evening, colleagues. The question I asked was in terms of the occupation of the building going forward. Would it be as a rental basis, or would we be looking to sell it on the open market? I think my understanding from the paper was renting the accommodation, the location, but could I have clarification on that, please? Thank you.
Yes, the intention would be to lease the building.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. I obviously did declare an interest on this at the beginning because it had become before the town council, and I am aware that surveys were done on the building. My understanding, if I remember correctly, so you'll have to forgive me if I haven't, that this building wasn't in a good state of repair. And I think they done some forward plans over how much it would cost. But I think over the next, I think they've done it for like 1 year, then 3 to 5, 5 to 10. But I think over the next 10 years, it was something, if I remember correctly, about £60,000 worth of repairs. Now, who is going to be able to go into that building as a community group and be responsible for those repairs that obviously haven't been kept up with during the previous years? Because I doubt anybody is going to be able to have that sort of money. And I really don't think it's fair. I feel if you're going to rent out a building to an organisation, especially a community organisation, that building should be in good repair for them to going forward. I don't think they should be having to pick up repairs that are already needed. So forgive me if I've got that wrong, but I'm just on memory, that's what I recall. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Councillor James, can you clear that point up, please?
Well, if the property is in that sort of disrepair, then that, of course, is a matter for the council's property officers to take that up with the outgoing lessee. But perhaps the Executive Director of Business will clarify the point there.
Simon Bowers, please.
Thank you. The building is not in a poor state of repair. In fact, the previous tenants have kept it in quite good condition. They've been appropriate tenants. £60,000 over 10 years is £6,000 a year. That just reflects the fact that buildings age over time and routine repairs and maintenance are required. The council's had all its buildings surveyed and the total cost is many millions of pounds over the next 10 or so years. And that sounds like a frightening number, but that is simply the reflection of the fact that the council owns a lot of property, and all buildings, we'll all know this from our own homes and so on. Over time, windows need replacing, brickwork needs repointing, roofs may need some work. All these things come around just as a natural process of age and weather and so on. There's nothing untoward in the condition of the building.
Thank you, Simon Bowers. So we'll take our last one on this. That'll be Councillor Kennedy, please.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is that we've had a group, Happy Faces, that I understand that for quite some time they've been providing very valuable services within the community, reaching children that are disadvantaged, reaching parents that need that need this sort of service in terms of looking after their children. We're looking at this purely almost as a property issue, rather than how we actually ensure that we have, that we are providing services to residents. Now, of course, COVID has an effect right across society. They can't accommodate nearly as many people. Therefore, they don't have that income. Well, look, COVID is not going to be with us, hopefully, forever. Are we going to simply allow this organisation to be shut down because of a short-term financial issue? Have we got no special COVID funds that would help to resolve this and move forwards? Now, of course, I accept that there are difficulties. The Residents Association is effectively closing down. My understanding is that people don't get involved in residents associations because they are fascinated by managing old buildings. They get involved because they want to see the things that are actually happening. Should the focus of this discussion not be on what are the positive things that could be done for the community through the residents, not through the Residents Association, but within this community hall, and from there, surely that is the way then of getting other people involved. I just feel that this commercial property approach to a community hall is going to be damaging, and I don't see that you're going to be able to produce any sort of satisfactory solution in that way.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. I'll just come to Maria, who has a point, and then Councillor James, you can respond. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. I can assure you, councillors, that my team have been involved in a community development aspect as soon as the news came to our ears that there were issues with regard to Happy Faces. We are doing everything we can to support the community. We try to look at alternatives for keeping the nursery going and for alternative provision of the nursery nearby the site. We're talking to lots of community and voluntary organisations. We're working with other community organisations in the area who are doing community development work in that area. We're working very hard. We will do everything we can to make sure there is as much community provision in and around the Southbrook going forward. So the report before you is relating to the building because that's the decision that the council needs to make. But I can assure you, COVID or not, lots of people have been working very hard behind the scenes. Community organisations are great at sharing information with each other as well. So if we do get some volunteers come forward, there's lots of help available to help them get set up with a new organisation if somebody wants to take the building on.
Thank you, Maria. Councillor James, last comment, and then we'll go to the vote.
All I can add to Councillor Rich's question is the fact that it's not a purely property approach to this. We're not looking at it in that light. We're looking at a building that's being used for community purposes and which we hope we can secure so that community purposes are the prime activity at that particular building. We did point out that we're prepared to let the premises at a peppercorn rent. In other words, it's nothing. And also that the council's grants, as Councillor Hills mentioned, the council's grant policy would be applied. So what more can we do other than run a business for them, which is, of course, beyond our brief.
Okay, Councillor James. Oh, okay, so we'll go to the group now. With regards to those who are happy to recommend this to council, please do so by the raised hand. And any opposed to that, please? And any abstentions, please? Okay, that's 2 abstentions. Thank you. I think I got that right, Julie. Okay, the next item, item 3. This is how I propose we will do this. Councillor Randall, if you want to raise your motion to withdraw, if that is second, we will then go straight to the vote, whereby we will then decide whether to withdraw it. This is a side issue, and it's not the main substantive. So please, I'm sure you won't abuse the consideration I've given this. So if you'd like to raise the motion, why do you want it withdrawn? If it is second, we will then go to the vote. Over to you, Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to put forward a motion to have this item withdrawn from the agenda. As everybody is aware, I myself and Councillor Lomax called in the decision that went to council. I have been in touch with a monitoring officer regarding this, and he said this is on this paper clearly as a response to the consultation. The wording, I'm not comfortable with it because I do not feel that this is just on the consultation, because again, in the recommendation, it is about disposal of the land. So I feel that this should not be on the agenda. We should have that call-in meeting first, let the scrutiny decide whether that call-in is upheld or not, and no further discussions should be had on that land until that point.
Okay, thank you. You raise your point well. Is it second, please? Okay, Councillor Lomax, would you like to speak on this on second area?
Thank you, Chairman. No, I'm not muted. Yes, thank you. I agree entirely with what Councillor Randall has said. I think the wording of the motion, of the recommendation, is quite wrong in the circumstances. We still have a call-in process to go through, and if this was simply about consultation, the recommendation should actually reflect that, and it doesn't. So I'm very happy to second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, the first vote will be who is in favour of withdrawing this item from the agenda. Please raise your hand.
Sorry?
Raise your hand if you want to withdraw it, Councillor Lomax. You do? You don't want to?
No.
Okay, those who wish it to remain or go against the proposal for it to remain on the agenda, please raise your hand. Okay, that motion is lost. So we will now go to item 3. James, please.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start, bearing in mind that this is being streamed, and there may be members of the public listening, I'd like to do a little bit of background about the administration and one or two other statistics, because I believe that out there's been a great misunderstanding about certain matters that has been stoked up by some members of this council. First of all, the site in Easton Way belongs to Daventry District Council. Daventry District Council is responsible to and accountable to Daventry District, which comprises Daventry plus a huge area. In total, something over 250 square miles, which stretches from the borders of Harborough right down halfway to Banbury, which stretches across from beyond Braunston to round the back of Northampton to Moulton and Overston. It's a huge area. There are 73 parishes in that area, and its total population is 79,000. That's who we are accountable to. Daventry is the principal town in Daventry District. It has a population in round terms of about 25,000, compared with 79,000 for the district as a whole. Daventry is one parish, and it's represented by Daventry Town Council, not to be confused with the District Council. Now, this particular piece of land was once the playing field for the former Daventry Grammar School, which disappeared decades ago. And the land itself has been identified in the Settlements and Countrysides Local Plan as a site for development. These are known facts. Nothing has been sprung on anybody at all. So we are accountable to the residents of Daventry District, the 73 other parishes that contribute as council taxpayers and that expect the same services as anyone else in the district, the same services as Daventry itself. Now, this particular piece of what was educational land has been leased by Daventry Town Council in recent years and used as public open space, despite the fact that it has been identified for development at some time in the future. So that's the background to it, and I hope that the public out there understand that. This is not a site which belongs to Daventry Town, it belongs to the district. This is not permanent open space because it's been earmarked for development. In fact, we have in the past had a scheme for Easton Way. So we'll have to go into this debate looking at that particular background and understanding that. Right, so I'll now go through the report on the consultation, and I'll pick the bits out that I consider appropriate and try and be as brief as I can, because I want to come back to the issues of the corporate plan. I want to come back to the issues of the Settlements and Countryside Local Plan after I've done this particular task. So therefore, the purpose of this report is to advise on the outcomes of the public consultation undertaken on the proposed disposal of land at Easton Way, Daventry, for the provision of a third secondary school and provide an updated recommendation accordingly. And that seems appropriate, opening up to mention that we have had 3 secondary schools in Daventry, the former Grange School, which was demolished and became the college. So we've been here before with 3 schools. As was reported to Strategy Group in July, known as the July report, the council has been asked by Locate Ed, the Department of Education's new school sites company, to agree to the disposal of this land for the purpose of providing a new secondary school. The policy and factual basis was set out in the July report, and it's not repeated here. As the land is classed as public open space, the council was required to comply with the legal requirements to advertise for and consider objections prior to any disposal of open space. It took the opportunity to invite any other comments on the proposed disposal. That consultation is now closed, and the results are summarised in this report. Notices were placed in the local paper. They're on the council's website, social media, notices posted elsewhere in the council offices, and the public generally we made our best efforts possible to notify the public what was intended. And sure enough, there's been lots of speculation on social media, lots of comments, lots of falsehoods, I might say, mentioned on social media. But nevertheless, 219 responses were received. Some of them, a small amount, were actually in favour of the proposal, but since we were inviting people to object, we didn't expect a great deal to come out and say that's what they want. It's always the silent majority that counts. So 219 responses out of 25,000 people in Daventry and 79,000 people in Daventry district. But I suppose you could say that that's a reasonable response. Not very good, mind you, and not completely indicative, but there we are. So these responses were analysed and put into categories. Some people mentioned more than one item. So the analysis, if you total up the totals, it comes to more than 219. But first of all, we categorised them into need for a new school, loss of green space, location, road safety, congestion and pollution, unsuitable type of development and others. And you'll see the figures there on page 68, how that broke down the objections that were raised and the category which they fell in. They were then, they fall into a small number of themes. The substance of these objections can be summarised as follows. A, the existing schools are not oversubscribed. That's one theme. Risk of existing schools losing students and therefore income. Now remember, we've had 3 schools before. Risk of disrupting existing schools. Risk 1 of the existing schools may close and site be redeveloped. Improve the existing schools instead. Extremely unlikely to do anything at all to raise educational standards in Daventry. So that's the substance of the objections. Despite the fact that it was the DFE that recommended the provision of a new school in Daventry as far back as 2016. Now, the DFE must be assumed to have a good knowledge of education. The proposed occupant, the Tove Learning Trust, they must be assumed to have a very good knowledge of education and the possibilities for a 3rd secondary school in Daventry and the opportunities that it creates. We cannot say that they do not know what they are doing, because they obviously do, or certainly they know better than anyone else. The issue was largely discussed in the July report. in terms of the level of subscription of schools, as noted in the July report, the January 2020 consensus shows Parker School student numbers at 1135 and DSLVs at 630. So it looks as though Parker is reasonably up to capacity. Daintree is likely to be substantially below capacity. And if you allow for a 5% number of empty places in either school, it works out that there should be a spare capacity for about 561. Now, of course, it's not just Daventry. We also have to consider the Daventry catchment area for schools. If you throw that in as well, the Daventry catchment area for the age groups 11 to 16, you're probably somewhere near 1,000. And that's without the growth that Daventry is embarking on, the provision of the North East SU and the South East SU, with a total of, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, over 6,000 houses in total between the two, probably, or getting on for that. So there is going to be a number of places required for children coming from houses that are not yet built So that's looking at need. There is a need, a proven need for a third secondary school in Daventry. You then come on to item 433, loss of open space. These can be summarised as loss of green link between Daventry Country Park and the town centre. Land should be retained as green space. Other sites are available. Site is a valuable open space, especially as seen during the COVID-19 pandemic. Once the site was gone, it would not be available for other uses. Public access to school playing fields, etc., would be limited in time and scope. Right. Well, the most obvious point is that the council has already decided to develop the site in policy EC3 of the Settlements and Countryside Local Plan. I'm still going to come back to that before I'm finished. This was adopted earlier this year. So earlier this year, we adopted our Settlements and Countryside Local Plan, which showed that this site was earmarked for development. The development of this site for a secondary school would actually result in at least half of it on the indicative plans that was presented to the July report, would show that at least half of the site would remain as open space, open playing space. All right, there will be some restrictions on public access to it, even though that will be part of the conditions of the alienation. There will be some restrictions nevertheless, because it's still a school, it'll be a school building. But, you know, talk of loss of open space in Daventry is quite frankly ridiculous. There are 120 acres of open space within a mile of the Eastern Way site, 120 acres. And that's excluding the area of the reservoir and the water spaces of the Daventry Country Park. So 120 spaces, that's about, you could get probably nearly 2 golf courses on that, if it were all in one. So that gives you an idea of how much land that is. So you see, most of it will still, or a good half of it will still remain as open space, and there will be public access to the site in accordance with any regulations or rules that the school may reasonably impose on such public use. Item 444, the magic number, item 444, the substance of these objections can be summarised as follows. Too close to existing schools. New schools should be closer to new developments, particularly Daventry North East. Well, of course, it will be nearer to Parker School, but further away from Southbrook School, but it will be in a very central and accessible location for those pupils that come, students, if you like to call them that come in from the catchment area. And of course, the site is within 2 miles of the northeast and southwest urban sustainable urban extensions. So it's ideally situated. Then we come to item 445, one of the issues, road safety, congestion and pollution. The substance of these objections can be summarised as follows. Having the existing schools off Ashby Road and the new school in close proximity would result in congestion and pollution, would increase the emissions of carbon dioxide. And there were, of course, some who thought it was a good idea, the provision of the school was a good idea, but traffic lights on Eastern Way would be needed. Well, of course, the first issue, the close proximity would result in congestion and pollution. That would be tested through the planning application process, which will include highways comments, the assessment of traffic impacts. And of course, if planning permission was not obtained on the site, the site would remain in or be returned to the council's ownership. So either way, that's a matter for the planning committee to consider as if and as appropriate. This process would also test the requirement for traffic lights and other traffic control measures. And of course, any non-school development of the site in accordance with the Settlements and Countryside Local Plan would also be likely to generate traffic. Let's say, for example, we did nothing, it carried on, it then belongs to, after reorganisation, it belongs to West Northampton Unitary Council, West Northamptonshire Council, and they decide, let's get rid of that site at Eastern Way, or let's develop it. The public sector partnership, let's develop it for what's its best alternative use? Well, predominantly residential. So let's stick a load of houses on it. That would generate quite a lot of CO2, I would think, and quite a lot of congestion in particular. So really, this is the best alternative. So we don't consider there's any reason to believe the development of the school in this location as opposed to elsewhere would increase carbon dioxide emissions. And of course, it is the most accessible and convenient site. And it's next to what we term the education quarter, which is the Hill School, the old UTC, which is now part of Parker School. And it's also, for what it's worth, will be close to the Icon building, which of course has its own little raked theatre there, and which is ideal and might even become useful, might be handy. Cafe might be handy. Then we come to 446, unsuitable type of development, E. The substance of these objections summarised as follows. No space for playing fields on the site. That, of course, is incorrect because a good half of the site is devoted to play use. B, most or many students would be driven to school as the site is too far away, particularly from development sites. Well, of course, we have got very good access for cycling. And we do have what's known as the Black Path in any event. That's suitable for cycling, and we're doing all we can to improve that provision. So that would be one thing. And it's within 2 miles of all dwellings, of course, within the sustainable urban extensions. Previously, of course, we had a part of it considered for retail use, but that was only a very small part. So that doesn't really apply. Somebody has suggested build an outdoor swimming pool on the site. Well, of course, You'll forgive me, Chair, if I digress for a little more than a minute, if I say this particular issue surfaces from time to time, the question of the outdoor swimming pool. The outdoor swimming pool was closed and recommended for closure in 2006 because it needed 140,000 spending by way of repairs to the pool, and that each swimmer that visited that pool cost the district council £23. Those are the figures that were published in the newspaper in 2006. So you see, not only was it facing, of course, with depreciation, it had been there since the early 60s, but of course, it was facing a huge capital expenditure. 2 of the smaller pools had closed already, and the quality of the water sometimes left a little bit to be desired too. The land, of course, belonged to Daventry District Council. Part of it may have belonged to the Borough Council before that, which Daventry District took over, or it merged into that, became that with reorganisation. But those are the facts about that pool. It wasn't closed because, you know, we thought it was inappropriate outdoor swimming, got a new leisure complex and all the rest of it. Very good leisure complex, actually, a very comprehensive one with sports halls and, of course, cafeteria, indoor swimming pool, changing rooms in good condition and well run. So it wasn't closed because of a desire to close it and use
Sorry,
the land.
Councillor James, can we just concentrate on
Yes.
not the swimming pool, we're talking about the secondary school.
Yeah, I do want to finish this point because both of these have been confused in the mix, in the public's eye, and it needs to be clarified. So I'll end up by saying this: those are the reasons that outdoor pool closed. And in any event, it wasn't part of the grammar school playing field. So there are 2 separate issues, and I've answered the one on the pool there, hopefully for good and all time. So coming back to this, one other item was put a proper park on the site. Well, I don't think anyone would suggest that we need another proper park on the site when we've got 1 or 2 parks that don't get full use anyway. I'm thinking of Spider Park and Daneholm, which doesn't get a great deal of use, particularly Spider Park. So there's no need for a proper park on that site. The site would be more suited for retail. I think retail is a dirty word these days, and it's not worth pursuing that. And if we were to pursue that particular option, then of course there is Site 5, which we've been working on for some years, which is more beneficial to the town centre because it's closer to the town centre. And if there was going to be any retail, it would presumably, subject to what comes out of the town centre vision, it would go on that particular site anyway. So they're very diverse items. The substance can be summarised as follows. The school would not produce any economic improvement. Well, better educated children has got to be an economic improvement, as is also the spending of a capital amount of 23.5 million in building this school in the first place. It's going to generate economic activity. Risk of increased antisocial behaviour, opportunity for grooming rings, drug lines to focus in one area. A school may produce more litter with potential criminal activity. And opposition, which is not really an objection, opposition to giving the land away for free. Well, if I was going to invest 23.5 million in your town, I would say we're not really giving it to them free, especially if we're imposing strict conditions on any transfer. So they are very diverse items. You're not going to stop drug use wherever it is in town. And it wouldn't do to speculate too much on where that sort of activity takes place, but you won't stop that anyway. Litter, there's no reason to believe that Daventry school children are likely to create a lot of litter. That's an offence in any event. So criminal behaviour, the school to create or be responsible for criminal behaviour? I think not. I think that's very, very, it's not something that I would want to suggest that's prevalent in Daventry at all, school children. So there we have it. So when you sum up the overall consideration and you look at the objections, you can see that there's nothing there really which underpins or substantiates any reason for not transferring this site for the provision of a new school. There's nothing there at all. And finally, well, not finally, because I want to come back to something else, the financial implications. We've now had a formal valuation of the site, which I don't know the basis on which that was done, but I would think it would be more likely on the basis that predominantly it was provision of housing, with a market value of 4.2 million. You remember at the July meeting, we suggested a ballpark figure of about 5 million as being the upper limit on the value for that site. 4.2 million is against 5 million. Well, in these days, that sort of margin, of course, is acceptable. If it's restricted for use as a state-funded school, which it would be, we reckon it's only worth 1 million for that use, or rather the valuers recommend that figure, 1 million. Now, I put that now to one side and come back to the relevant meetings of the strategy group, where these plans for provision of a new school in Daventry were discussed. And I refer to the minutes of the strategy group on the 4th of July 2019, where it was recommended that the changes in the corporate plan as detailed in the report are approved, that the plan as amended shall be extended to cover the period until the 31st of March 2021. So that corporate plan is extended until we finally cease to be a council at the end of 2021, at the end of March 2021. That the triennial survey of residents is cancelled. So residents were not going to be consulted again on the extension of that plan. No local government association peer review of Daventry District Council should be arranged. Now, at that particular meeting, first of all, get my papers, Councillor Wendy Randall suggested that the targets be retained. However, she considered that the target relating to the number of school places should have been removed previously. So Councillor Randall was there at that meeting and voted for it. Also at that meeting, and since they don't refer to the part of the school, Councillor Joe Guildford was present, as was Councillor Colin Morgan. In fact, at that particular strategy group meeting, most of those that were entitled to be at strategy were probably there. And the corporate plan was recommended. That's the 4th of July, 2019. Minutes of the council, 25th of July, 2019. Recommendation of strategy group approved without any notable debate. And the item that was approved without any notable debate, the corporate strategic plan. Now, I think there's possibly one or two members of the current Daventry District Council that may not have been here in 2019. Certainly one of them might not have been, it may have been two. I can't readily say. But apart from that, all those that were entitled to vote and attended, both the strategy group and the full grants council group, voted for the corporate plan. And the
Point of
corporate
order, Chair. Are we supposed to be discussing the consultation?
Bring your comments to a close now, David. That's been.
I'd like to finish this with the strict.
As I said, you just want to close your remarks now.
I'll come back.
No, if you just close your remark, just come to a conclusion, then we'll go to.
Okay, I'll finish with my remarks then. The next thing is the minutes of the strategy group on the 6th of February 2020. Adoption of settlements in countryside local plan.
David, I think we get your point with that. Let's move to the group so that we can discuss the paper in hand. Thank you for your time. I appreciate that. I'm sorry, but it raised a good point. So if we go to the group now, those that would like to speak, Councillor Hills, if we can, this is obviously an emotive debate and it could go on for a long time. What I would like is a little bit of discipline, not to repeat points that have already been raised. We don't have to do that. It's been a very comprehensive report from Councillor James. So Councillor Hills, to you now, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. One of the reasons why I support this is I go into my past experience when, as a governor at what was then Southbrook School, and then right through to when it became DSLV, I attended many opening evenings and spoke to many parents who'd come to see and talk about education. I've also, as part of my looking into this, if you like, spoke to many parents, and I put together some reasons why I think we should support this. And I'd just like to quickly run through these because I think they must be used as evidence why we should support this. And I say to item 1, firstly, this recommendation, etc., puts fresh impetus on education within the district, and I repeat, within the district, by bringing it to the attention of the public. And there's nothing wrong with that. Education should be one of the foremost things we look at. Secondly, often we have lost more pupils to outside schools than we have actually gained, and that's a fact. Many parents, in spite of improvements, have no confidence in the existing schools. And again, that's a fact. When you look to the future, in view of the number of new houses being built, another school will definitely be needed. And I just repeat what David said. Remember, we lost the Grange. Eastern Way has always been used for educational purposes. There's always been an educational element there. The new school will not take up all the green space. There will be space for outside facilities such as sport, etc. And this could be then used probably within other areas outside of school. This means it could be used to provide physical activities for our young people, something we're engaged to encourage as a council. A free school with a recognised name will encourage some parents thinking of going outside to take a look at what's on offer in Daventry, and that I've established by talking to parents. As regards the site, as David said, the plan will have to be approved by planning itself, including recommendations from highways. One thing I'd like to mention when we mention all this about the problem with traffic, etc. Going back a few years ago, when I ran the football club, we ran a women's kickball competition because women's football wasn't recognised, and 600 people attended, and we had no problems whatsoever with the traffic if it's properly organised. So I'd just like to mention that. The next thing is the existing schools to my mind, should not be afraid of competition. It could and should help them to improve. They should work with one another to do that. And finally, if the government is prepared to invest some 20 odd million in the future of education in Daventry, we should not refuse it. These opportunities do not come round often. And I've had that proved to me in examples when we've lost things through turning it down. We then go onto the back of the list for any future funding. And that has been proved in some of the things that I've had in the past. So that's 11 reasons why I think we should go ahead with this. And I think if we use common sense and we look at what's needed, this is where we should move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. We're going to run through, we're going to try and keep it fair by having opposition and then our side as well. So can I have Stephen Dabbs next, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak. We've had lots of interesting comments from the two councillors previously. I think, Councillor James, that the council has a bit of a PR problem if you think that the outdoor pool is not resonating around the town. Even now, there is actually a group that has been formed recently to resurrect that, but we digress. Just on the summary that we really had last time, that we don't want a school now. We don't need it now, maybe sometime in the future. Yes, that's possibly accepted, but we should put it in the place where the new developments are. And I think particularly when you look at the geography of the town in the northeast is where it should go, not on Eastern Way. It is a valuable green space, and that's what we should be keeping. But let's just turn to the consultation. I mean, I'm absolutely dumbfounded at this report and this paper. You do a consultation, you don't ask any difficult questions or anything like that. You know, there's no format to it. Just there you are, public, what you think. You get 219 objections. Yes, you get a few that are positive. Excellent. But what I cannot believe is you then go through the exercise of dismissing every one of those concerns, every one of the ideas. It's totally irrelevant. Now, you know, I put a very detailed answer in, and maybe, you know, I talk complete nonsense most of the time, who knows? But I know for a fact that some of my residents in my ward put incredibly detailed answers in, or details into the consultation, if you can call it that. Lots of good ideas, and therefore I think just to dismiss the good people at Daventry out of hand it's obnoxious. It is so arrogant, it just isn't true. Why on earth do you bother consulting? And the answer to that, I dare say, is you have a legal requirement. But surely that legal requirement is there for a good reason. What is that good reason? Because the opinion of the people counts. So, you know, if you're supposed to do a consultation, it's important. If people oppose it, well, why do you think you're right to go against that opposition? The opposition here is overwhelming. You know, you, the few, the council, if you like, opposing the many. I know I may be substituting word from some other political campaign, but I think it's relevant here. It's not democracy. It's absolutely appalling. Just a word on democracy. I've heard it said, I think maybe even Councillor Orger. I mean, there've been several meetings on this. I don't keep a track of everything that everybody says, but mention that, you know, the public have voted on the various plans that we've had. Absolutely right. But in this district, we've had no votes for the last 2 years. So your mandate is sort of running out there. And I think that the problem we have, Councillor James mentions the settlements and countryside local plan part 2 for Daventry District 2011 to 2029, which I'm reading off the paper. It seems like a certain amount of that is now up in the air, is it not? We've got a new consultation out, detailed questionnaire and consultants concerned with the new town vision. But just going back to the the Part 2 plan, and specifically EC3, policy EC3, which relates to Site 3 and Site 5. So Site 3, I think, is the Eastern Way. Site 5 is the old outdoor pool. And just reading off, item A, allocated for mix of uses, residential, office, hotel, leisure, restaurant, and health. Doesn't say education. And I think looking at the plans, I know we always oppose the water space in the canal, but it looks a darn sight more attractive than a school, I have to say. Other things on there. Item C2, respect its settings, including provision of open space. Well, I don't think you're respecting it if you put a school field on there. And yes, some of it is open space, but it is not public open space. You may be able to use it if you're a member of a specific club, but can you go and walk your dog across it? Can you go and have a little kickabout with your mates? I doubt it. Item C3, ensure buildings optimize views. I don't think a school is going to optimize a view. I've not seen one that's architecturally interesting. It'll probably be like a big box. I can't see that that's going to be interesting. C4, develop tourism potential. Well, I can't see how that's going to apply. Provide attractive footage to Eastern Way. Well, again, as I just mentioned, it's not going to. Have no adverse impact on the town centre. Well, what sort of impact will it have? Maybe it doesn't have an adverse impact, but where's that positive impact? We're trying to generate or regenerate the town centre, make it attractive to visitors and residents, bring people into the town centre. This doesn't do it at all. And on item C8, integrate with plans for EC2. And EC2 is just north of the High Street, isn't it? Which is now just the cinema. I can't see that it's going to integrate with that unless there's going to be lots and lots of school children heading over for the cinema.
Councillor Dabbs, you're straining a little bit. There's a lot of people to talk. So if you can keep your remarks to the point, and we can then move on to other speakers.
Well, I'll summarise that one. It goes against the plans that we've got in place. Many of the plans that we have in place are now potentially not relevant because they haven't been, due to circumstances, realisable. That's fair enough. So if we're looking at a new plan, a new vision, that's great. But why do a new vision when you take a big chunk of the land out of it, which would be Eastern Way, which I think is absolute madness to make that decision before you've determined what you're going to do with your town. And I think that really sums it up. I think, just summing up, if the Department of Education want a school, well, they can have one, but they need to put it in the right place. And what I would appeal to members at this meeting, that I was very encouraged by the diverse opinions when it was last at strategy. I know it's scraped through by a whisker, but I'd be surprised if it scrapes through again by a whisker. But I really would ask members to, especially the local members, to think clearly. Don't be sheep. Do what you need to do. Make sure that the decision here is correct, and vote it down. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dabbs. Just a thing of correction. There was recently a town election, a by-election, which was won by the Conservatives. So there has been a recent democracy or event of democracy, and they chose
the lowest turnout I've ever seen. I think.
Well, you failed to mention that in your narrative, but we'll move on now, please, to Deanne Eden, please. Eden, please. Okay, Deanna, can you? Yeah, Nelly. Try once more. Are you still? Try again. Do you want to try once more? Yeah, now speak. Yeah, speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, well done.
Right, okay. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak about this. I'm very much in favour of this school. It will be lovely to see the old grammar school field used for the sports, etc., that it used to have, and the school right next to it. When you think now, we've got new estates that are going to come up Buckby Road, Staverton Road, and the Kilsby and Welton roads, plus all the other estates that are now in process of being built all around the district. So we need more schools. We can't stop the parents taking the children out to other schools, but we can improve our schools if possible and get them to stay here. One of the things mentioned that the people didn't like was they were on about all the traffic that would be around the school when it comes to dropping off and picking up. But this isn't intended to be an infant and junior school like you've got up Ashby Road. A lot of the cars and that take those children. It'll be a secondary school. So unless pupils have medical reasons, all local pupils should be able to walk home or into the town centre to catch some buses. Some buses do stop in Lodge Road because when we go to DDF meetings, the people come out and wait for a bus from there. I believe there's others through the day. But if there's a problem with school buses, could they not be allotted drop-off pickup times in Lodge Road? Because when the children come out of school, they've got an underpass, which will take them straight up to DDC offices. They haven't got to cross a road, so they've got no problem there. And agreed times before and after school could be done if it was only for half an hour. Buses don't pick up until just after the schools finish, and then they have half an hour to pick them up or something like that. The path through the field to Ashby Road, I understand by the plan that was sent out to us, is being kept. So pupils can walk through there and pick up the cars or whatever in the old swimming pool car park. You'd be surprised how many students come from Southbrook School, going to school and coming back. You try and get through that crossing down the bottom of Abbey Street at school time, and you're held up every 2 or 3 minutes because children are coming back from the school and going uptown either to catch other buses or to walk the rest of the way home. I can't see a problem with it at all. But I will say one more thing. I've lived in Daventry all my life. I started school when I was 4 years old and I left when I was 16. Our family didn't have a car. I walked to school and home from school every day for those years. And if I can do that, and my boys did it as well when they went to school, and some of those went to the Southbrook, they can walk. Why can't other children? They don't need these lifts home all the time. If they've got a long way to go, fine. But a drop of rain or a bit of snow, like we used to walk in, won't hurt them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eden, and some wise words of your experience as a mum and as a child. Let's move on to then Ken Ritchie then, please.
Thank you, Chair. I promise I won't be nearly as long as Councillor James. I see that in our constitution, it says that no speech may exceed 5 minutes without the consent of the chairman. But are you happy to allow a councillor to just waffle on for so long, taking up the time of the meeting?
Sorry, Councillor Ritchie, let's make it very clear. I'm allowing you to speak, all right? And if you're going to carry on attacking me, then I will withdraw that privilege. So please, can you get to the point?
I put it
to the point of the debate. Thank you.
Well, look, it's not an attack. It is a question.
Okay, well,
I could spend a huge amount of time responding point by point to things that have been made, not just by Councillor James, but by others. But I'm not going to do it, because I don't think at this stage this is the right point. The monitoring officer has actually written in an email in the last few days, the report on the strategic agenda is dealing with the consultation response only. The discussion we're having hasn't been about the consultation response. We're having a debate, and that debate should take place after the issues have gone to the scrutiny committee, and any points arising from the scrutiny committee will then come back, presumably to the full council, to be debated alongside other issues that, well, alongside the report that comes from the regional strategy group meeting. I just don't see that this is at all an appropriate discussion to be having. But however, as the discussion, there are just 2 points that I would like to make. The first is the concern over what would be the effect of a new school in close proximity to existing schools on the schools that we already have. There is an assumption that's been put forward that a new school would attract some of the people who would otherwise be schooled outside Daventry back into schools in the town. Now, I'm not quite sure where the evidence for that comes from. My concern is that if you build a new school that has about places for 1,000 students, if you do that in Daventry, a lot of these places will be taken by people who would otherwise have simply gone to the Parker Academy or Daintree. After all, I mean, if you're a parent and your children are coming up to secondary schooling, and what is on offer are 2 rather old schools and 1 brand new one, clearly you're going to go for the brand new one. Now, I mean, let's be very conservative. Supposing only half of the people who go to the new school are only half, about 500, are people who would otherwise have gone to Daintree or Parker. That would result in about a 30% cut in the number of students at these 2 schools. The most vulnerable is, of course, Daintree, because of its low numbers and its the large number of places it's got. But that could reduce the number of students at Daintree to around 400. Reduce the number of students, you reduce the income to these schools. The schools are then in a position where they can't employ the same number of teachers. If they can't employ the same number of teachers, they're not in a position to offer the same range of subjects, and they're in a downward spiral. They're less attractive, and they head for a point in which closure is going to become inevitable. Of course, there'll be a need for an extra school in Daventry by the time the Northeast extension is built, by the time that we have developed Micklewell and the areas to the west of Daventry. Of course, that will happen, but at that stage, we will be able to have a new school without damaging the schools that we've got, and we should be able to put the new school somewhere closer to where the new students are going to be. So I really think, we haven't had any sort of impact assessment of what the effect of the new school would be. The Department of Education, there is an obligation on the Secretary of State to produce an impact assessment of all new schools. Where is it? We haven't seen it. So that is my one thing. But
okay, Councillor Ritchie, you got 1 minute, and then we're going to need to move on. There's still a few people to speak.
1 minute is quite enough, thank you. Okay. The other thing that I would say is that to me, the central thing is about Daventry, the nature of the town, the sort of ambience of the town. Are we really simply going to look at the areas around the town centre as if it was a bit of real estate? We've talked before about needing to have some sort of vision. We've talked about needing to have a town that has got its unique selling point, that has got a bit of character, that is not just buildings. And I just feel that if you go ahead and use this site for a school, then you sacrifice something that you will never get back again.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Right, we will hear from Councillor Adam Brown, then Councillor Wendy Randall will be our final speaker. Sorry, Councillor Harris, we'll have to, that will be a fair and balanced debate then with regard to numbers, and then we will go to the vote. So Councillor Adam Brown, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try and be brief and stick to points around the consultation. I think we need to be mindful of the fact that consultations are just that. They're not referenda, they're not weighted opinion polls. And so when we go out to consultation and we gain 219 responses, as Councillor James quite rightly pointed out in his opening remarks, that leaves tens of thousands of people from whom we haven't heard a thing. Now, I do have to take issue with Councillor Dabb's characterisation of the report as dismissing the residents out of hand, dismissing their concerns. We have an entire paper in front of us that directly addresses the concerns raised via the consultation. The number of responses across various issues have been looked at, the objections have then been analysed and counter-arguments where appropriate put forward. I think that's an entirely valid and an entirely consistent way of approaching a consultation process. And in fact, I think the most important point to come out of the consultation is that the primary source of objection to these proposals is the lack of a need for a secondary school in the town. There's value in this consultation because actually we've been able to establish that it is a misconception about the proposals that is in a large way fueling the campaign against the expansion of educational offering in Daventry that we're trying to deliver. The need for a new school at a relatively close point in the future is well established. We know that that point is coming down the line. Even Councillor Ritchie accepts that point. Now, whether you then decide to build a school within the 3 years that we're anticipating being able to build that school, if you wait a couple of years longer, is to me quite a minor point to quibble over. I think what is appropriate is that we future-proof the educational offering in the town as soon as possible. We don't wait for houses to come along without the accompanying infrastructure, which is a point that frustrates people so often and to such a great extent that we shouldn't follow in that vein. And I think we have had a decent consultation here. 219 responses is more than we get on many issues. All the salient points raised have been analysed through the report. I note Councillor Dabbs's objections that there have been some very detailed responses that haven't been addressed by this paper. Hopefully he'll be able to fulfil his role as a local ward councillor, liaise with officers, liaise with us, Chairman, as leader and deputy leader. I wrote to Councillor Ritchie at length for the reasoning behind my developing opinion on this issue. I'd be more than happy to engage with Councillor Dabbs and any other members of the council in terms of their views on this issue. So I'm more than happy to back the recommendation. I would just share Councillor Ritchie's slight frustrations that we seem to be hearing the same arguments rehashed time and again. Can you still hear me, Chairman? Sorry, everyone's frozen on my screen.
No, I can. No, we haven't fallen asleep. No, it's all right. We can hear you, yeah. Oh, he's frozen now. I think he's frozen. Or he's keeping very still. I think we will move on. If we can get him back, that'll be great. Councillor Randall, you've got the floor now. And then we will close this debate. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm very disappointed actually that I'll put forward a motion tonight and actually nobody, went with me. I got in touch with the local government association over this issue because I felt very uncomfortable about having this paper, like I say, when I've called in the decision for this to be worded the way it was. I was advised to put forward a motion and ask for it to be withdrawn. I was then told if that wasn't upheld, I was to get back in touch with them tomorrow, which I will do, along with sending all documentations that I have so they can clearly look at this to see whether it was dealt with appropriately. So that's where I will be going with this one tomorrow. I feel very saddened over what I hear and all the comments I hear. For people that know the children and the families of this town. How you just disregard them is just awful. The school that you're talking about is in quite an affluent area. And I don't know how many of you have actually looked in detail about the differences in the school in Spon against the school here. Totally different. There is absolutely no comparison to the children that attend school. Spon School, you've only got 16 children in the whole of that school of over 1,000 children where English isn't a first language. In the two Daventry schools, there are almost probably a third. Totally, just no comparison. It absolutely angers me and frustrates me what I hear and what you want to do. That Eastern Way is used so much for the public, and they really value that piece of land. You just totally seem to be disregarding. You have built a UTC, which was a total flop. You thought it was going to be the most marvellous thing for Daventry. It was going to bring industry in. You got it all wrong. How do you know that you're not going to get it all wrong again? You are going to lose a vital piece of green space. You are going to bring in a new school. You will probably end up closing one of the other schools, which will then probably end up being sold to a developer and filled with a load of houses. Who has spoken with the parents of the town and the catchment? The report in the previous strategy paper was written where they do not even know what villages are in the catchment for the two schools. What does that actually tell you about the need of the people? I am absolutely furious. I have got so much evidence to give in at that calling meeting, and that's when I thought that this was next going to be heard. Not on this paper tonight, not the way it was worded tonight. And I am totally furious. I'm not saying anything more, but like I say, I will be feeding all these documents back to the advice that I got given, the legal advice that I got given today. And I suggest that when we actually look we won't now, will we? But when you actually try and look at the Constitution to read all about the call-in, there is actually nothing really in there. So you've got a lot of basis to go on, which was why I sought the advice that I've sought.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think we'll go to vote. Just before we do it, so we have balance. I think one voice hasn't been heard, and that's the voice of the youth, the children, future children of this town that deserve a good educational offer. And this is our response. And I'd like to thank all those that have responded. You have been listened to. There will be an opportunity to test whether this is a suitable school at a suitable location in the planning process. Most importantly, we must remember the young people, the future generations that require to be educated and have good educational offers. I believe this will be a catalyst of improvement in all of our schools, the school that we need, and hopefully for generations to come, they'll be thanking us for the hard work we've put in making it happen. So I'd like now to go to the vote. Those of you who will approve this for recommendation to council, please raise your hand. And those against, please raise your hand. And are there any abstentions? Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for the debate. I do apologise for those that thought I should have been purer on it, but it's such an emotive issue. I thought we needed an opportunity all to speak. Thank you, Councillor James, for your input as well with regard to presenting the paper. We'll now move on, please, to housing and the environment. Councillor Cribbin.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully this will be a relatively straightforward report for us tonight. We have before us a report that we're proposing to use some of the Section 106 monies that we hold from previous developments to help fund a affordable housing scheme over in Norton. The background here is that in March 2007, we granted full planning permission for 6 affordable homes in Gordon's View in Norton. And a year later, Northamptonshire Rural Housing Association put 6 homes there, and they were quickly let to local people. Now, a recent planning application, one or two members on the call tonight will recall that last Wednesday, this application came to planning committee. We've now got a further planning application, which has been approved at the 2nd of September meeting for a further 8 affordable houses. The site that was approved last week was 8 approved. I think it was 8 affordable houses, 2 the 4-bedroom houses, I think, and 2 self-builds on that site. We're proposing, I would refer perhaps members to page 77. There's a table in there with how the funding source is made up for this particular site. We're proposing, the bottom figure in there is £65,000. We're proposing that comes out of monies that the council holds for such affordable housing development schemes, which we've had from a commuted sum on a previous planning application back in 2013 in Clipston. Now, the details regarding that are at page 76 in the table there. So an amount of £243,000 was, or £243,524 was Section 106 monies that were put aside to help us fund further schemes further down the line. Now, the reason that money was put forward in that particular application is that on that particular site, there wasn't any affordable housing granted on that particular site, but as a reason for it to be allowed to be given planning permission, Section 106 monies were put aside for future development across the district for affordable housing. So that's something that can happen in the planning process if the affordable housing is not available on that particular site. Further money is put aside for future development. And this is what we've got before us at the moment, is that we're proposing to use some of that money to help fund this scheme at Gordon's View in Norton. So we've got a sum of £65,000 here, and the proposal tonight is that we approve this £65,000 out of the monies we've got that to help this scheme go forward. There's no financial cost to the district council at all on this, and obviously these Section 106 monies, they have a limited life. If they're not spent, then the monies will go back to the developer in due course. Obviously that will leave us approximately £83,927 back in the pot, as it were, to spend on future schemes. But I put it to the members tonight that this is a very good use of the monies that we have set aside going forward, and I propose that we accept this and recommend that this goes through to full council for approval.
Thank you, Councillor Cribbin. Councillor Brown, please. Nice to have you back.
Thank you. Hopefully I'll remain unfrozen. Yeah, I'd just like to add my backing to this proposal as one of the local ward members. I've heard consistently over the years from Norton Parish Council, and I'm sure Councillor Hills would have done so in his tenure as their county councillor, how much desire there is in Norton for properties that are available for local people to buy, affordable properties for local people to buy, and I know that this scheme has very much the support of the people of Norton and certainly their parish council, and I'm more than happy to vote in favour of the recommendation before us, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Colin Morgan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to echo both comments there, both speakers, both my role of as resources portfolio, but also someone who can quite clearly see the logic in this this use of money here for this development, and providing further homes in that settlement there for those. So very simply, Chair, lots of support from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we will take this to the vote then, please. Those of you happy to recommend this to full council, please do so by the raised hand. Thank you. And that looks unanimous. Any opposed or abstentions? No, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, Councillor Chandler. Your opportunity now to see us to the end of the meeting. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Slightly less controversial than what we've had before us this evening. I'll try and make these items as briefly as I can, but it is important that we give our attention. I'm also going to make the assumption, Chairman, that members have read the papers, so I won't be reading them to you. The first one of mine is the conservation area proposal review for Preston Capes. Members will be well familiar with this, so we don't need to dwell on it, but you will know that we do have an obligation to review existing conservation areas and make new designations from time to time. We currently have 31 conservation areas, which for a district of 73 parishes is a good score. Preston Capes was first designated in 1976, reviewed in 2000, but it doesn't have an up-to-date appraisal or management plan, so we've taken this opportunity to review it. I think it's important that members refer to paragraph 4.2. The listed bullet points there give you the reason for wanting to consider the conservation area for Preston Capes, but it's also a good summary of the kind of thing that conservation areas are all about. So all we're asking for this evening is a resolved item that consultation be undertaken on this appraisal and management plan for Preston Capes. We do have a slight problem with consultation at the moment because of the pandemic, which may get better or worse, who knows. But we do believe that we can carry out a consultation with the possible difficulty of having a public meeting, which is a requirement owing to some ancient legislation which doesn't seem to have been looked at for many years. But we will manage that in a COVID secure environment. So what I'm saying, Chairman, is that there is a proposed draft conservation area appraisal and management plan for Preston Capes. I hope members will look at it because it tells them a lot about Preston Capes, which some of them may not have known. We've had a consultation with the parish council and an exhibition. And what I'm suggesting now is that we have a 6-week consultation. So that's the first part of the resolution, is that the draft Preston Capes Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan be consulted on. The second thing is that in association with conservation areas, members will also be aware that we have the opportunity to look at Article 4 directions controlling development on particular points within the consultation area, such as alteration or replacement of windows and doors, construction, replacement, removal of porches or canopies, solar equipment, alteration to roofs, additional replacement to alterations to handrails, painting the exterior walls or construction and demolition of walls, gates and fences. An Article 4 direction does not prevent these things from happening. It simply makes sure that they are properly controlled by our development control colleagues in that an application has to be made. So what I'm asking for support this evening, Chairman, is that we resolve that this consultation be undertaken.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Anyone wish to speak on this? No takers, so I will just check with Deanna. No. I think we'll take this straight then to the vote. It's a resolved matter. If you're happy to resolve it, please raise your hand in agreement. And if there are any opposed to that, please do so by a like. And any abstentions? No, okay, that looks like that was unanimous. Thank you very much. Just on to your second paper.
Yes, thank you. This is a resolution, Chairman, with regard to the conservation area in Great Brinkton. This one has been a conservation area since 1998, but it's not been reviewed since then. And so we've taken this opportunity to review the architectural and historic interests of the conservation area and assess whether the boundary is fit for purpose. There is a village design statement for Great Brinkton, which was adopted a couple of years ago as a supplementary planning document. The proposed draft Great Brinkton Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan, the summary bullet points are listed in paragraph 4.2 as before. We've had some consultation locally as required. Officers attended a meeting on the 19th of June 2019. I only highlight that date because it was my birthday. There was an exhibition in the reading room, and the next stage therefore will include a formal consultation on this draft document and comments again on the difficulties of carrying out a consultation in pandemic conditions. But there is also associated with this a proposal to carry out some Article 4 directions, which will be subject, as always, to further consultation and come back to strategy group at a future meeting. So what I'm asking for now, Chairman, is a support to resolve that the consultation be undertaken on the draft Great Brinkton Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan, and that the Article 4 directions controlling with development with regards to the listed items as before, Chairman.
And thank you again, Councillor Chandler. Those, anyone wants to speak? Councillor Morgan, please.
Chair, thank you. I fully support these. I'm going to give my usual praise to these documents. I think they're fascinating documents. They're beautifully produced. They're a pleasure to read naturally. Strange enough, we never have that much debate about them. But they're kind of works of art in their own right, I think. And I always like to thank officers for working in conjunction with Councillor Chandler on producing such high quality papers. Thank you.
I'm sure your comments were appreciated. It doesn't look like anyone else is wishing to speak. So if we'd now like to go to the vote then, if you're happy to resolve this item, please do so with a raised hand. Looks like it's unanimous. Just anyone against? Didn't see any hands go up or abstentions. It looked like it was. Thank you very much. And on to your third paper, please. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I mentioned before Article 4 directions associated with conservation areas. This paper brings to strategy group a resolution that the Article 4 directions be made and that consultation be undertaken in the conservation areas at Flor, Wiedenbeck, Kilsby, Everton, Little Everton, Pittsford and Staverton. The Article 4 directions allow the local planning authority to remove specific permitted development rights, and this is a planning tool to protect the character and appearance of a conservation area. Some members have been approached by constituents saying, does this mean I can't do any of the things that I want to do? And members have come to me for advice, and I've tried to advise them in accordance with my understanding. But members might be pleased to know that we did in the past promise that there would be an opportunity for member development on the subject of Article 4 directions. That has now been arranged to take place before the planning committee on the 21st of October, Chairman. So members will receive notification of that and details, but I just thought I'd flag that up. So you can see what an Article 4 direction actually looks like because they are included within the documentation. I won't go through them with you, but they say what the restrictions are and to which properties they apply. The consultation, if we resolve to go ahead with it, will involve contacting all of the known owners, occupiers of the specified properties in the Article 4 directions, and there's an anomaly that because sometimes it's difficult to track the exact ownership, some people will get 2 copies of the notification, but that doesn't matter. It's just to make sure that everybody is aware that this consultation is taking place. It'll be a 6-week consultation subject to COVID pandemic restrictions. So that's what I'm asking for, Chairman, is that the strategy group resolve that these Article 4 directions be made and the consultation be carried out. If, as a result of the consultation, we then decide to recognise the Article 4 directions, then we have to give effectively a year's notice before they come into effect. That's it, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Very informative. Anyone to speak? Councillor Adam Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I was keen to speak on this because it affects several areas of my ward, and we haven't had enough controversy and discussion this evening, so I thought I might pipe up on this issue. As Councillor Chandler rightly says that we've got a specific Article 4 training session coming up. We did have a member development session previously that strayed on to Article 4 directions with a legal professional. I have to say, Chairman, that the more I learn about Article 4 directions, the less I like them. And so whilst it may not be consistent with my voting record in the past, and I'm fully mindful of the fact that I have just voted in favour of consulting on Article 4 directions simply because they were combined with consultation on wider matters. On this matter, I have to say I do object because we're looking to make Article 4 directions, and I've read my papers before Councillor Chandler questions that, and I'm aware that the Article 4 directions have to come back to Council to be confirmed before they come into effect, and then there will then be a subsequent delay. However, I view Article 4 directions as nannying, interfering, a complete infringement upon property rights, and effectively saying to homeowners that we don't trust them to make suitable decisions about the properties that they've spent hundreds of thousands of pounds upon purchasing. We don't trust them to take care of the lovely communities that they've chosen to move into or that they reside in. So we're going to put checks and balances in place, and you have to go through all the loopholes that the council put in place for you to be able to paint your front door. I think they're an abomination, quite frankly, Chairman, and I would ask my fellow councillors to vote against them. I'll certainly be voting against them. And that's all I've got to say about that.
Okay, I'm sure there are some benefits to them, Councillor Brown. Can't all be gloomy, but yeah, I appreciate your views on that and other similar issues. There doesn't appear to be anyone else who wishes to speak. So those of you that are happy to resolve this item, please do so by the raised hand. Thank you. Those who object, please raise hand. And any abstentions, please raise hand. Okay, one abstention, one objection. The rest were for, and that is passed. Sorry, Councillor Morgan, was that two?
Sorry, Chairman, there were two
Chair,
abstentions.
two abstentions. Sorry, Tony, I think Tony's saying the same.
Two abstentions, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Thank you. And on to your next paper then, please, Councillor Chandler.
Yes, thank you. This is the proposed response to consultations on changing changes to the current planning system, not to be confused with the recent white paper, which is to totally rewrite the planning system altogether. We have here, I won't go through this in great detail, Chairman. I don't think I need to. I can tell you that the proposed changes are a bit difficult to understand because they are obviously designed for areas not at all like the area that we represent and support. There are some dangers associated with what is being proposed, and those have been pointed out in the suggested response. One of the proposed changes is to change the method for assessing housing need, and this will have an adverse effect on Daventry District. And developers, I'm sure, will leap on that and say, you need more houses than you thought you needed, so we must build some more. Although we have currently in West Northants exceeded the requirement for housing in rural areas, according to the Joint Core Strategy figures, they've changed the rules, and it would require 506 more houses per year in West Northamptonshire than using the current method. And that's in the paper. So what we're suggesting is that the proposed consultation, which points out some of the difficulties introduced by the proposed changes, should be sent to government, and that this is a resolved item asking people to support the resolution that we send this response. Now, I hope, I'm not going to take you through the proposed response, Chairman. I think members who are interested have had the opportunity to read through, and they may have some points that they want to raise. I can see already a hand raised, probably objecting to some article or other that is in there, but that's what healthy debate is all about, genial statesman-like banter. I'll throw it open to members to comment, Chair.
I think I'll throw it over to Adam, Councillor Brown. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I can assure Councillor Chandler that my soapbox has been firmly stowed away, and I'm more than happy with our response to the consultation. I think it's balanced. It addresses the areas of concern where they need to be addressed, and I look forward to the proposed response to the other consultation that's ongoing, which I know is forthcoming. So no, I'm more than happy with this one, Chairman. Otherwise, I'd say so.
I'm sure you would. I'm sure you would, Deputy. Okay, it doesn't look like anyone else has indicated to speak. So, if you'd like to resolve this paper, please do so by the raised hand. Okay, that looks like that was, there was no abstentions. I haven't missed anyone, have I? Or objections to indicate? No, looked like it was. Thank you very much. And I think this is your final one, sir.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. We have to agree with our colleagues within West Northamptonshire a statement of community involvement. Now, you know, the statement of community involvement, we have one of our own for the district, which was adopted in 2017. It was developed largely with the production of the Settlements and Countryside Local Plan in mind, but it only considers Daventry District. There isn't a single coordinated approach to inform plan making across West Northamptonshire. The statement of community involvement, it's a very important part of plan making because it gives lots of people lots of opportunities to make their input as you develop the plan. We are working together with our colleagues on a new strategic plan for West Northamptonshire, and it would be necessary, therefore, to put in place a statement of community involvement which is fit for purpose in setting out an approach to this type of plan, a strategic plan for the whole of the new council area. A draft has been produced from each of the 3 local authorities. Officers have set out the methods of consultation and engagement that would be necessary for the production of the West Northamptonshire strategic plan. And obviously the new council will complete the development of that plan in the fullness of time. But we need to have an agreed statement of community involvement for the whole of West Northamptonshire. We've drafted a version ourselves, as have our colleagues in the other areas. It takes account of national planning policy and legislation, reflects current best practice, sets out the opportunities for residents and others to become involved in the making of the West Northamptonshire strategic plan, and details how the councils will meet their statutory requirements for engaging the community when preparing the plan. What we're hoping is that our colleagues in the other councils will also carry out a consultation of this. It's a joint effort, really. I mistakenly indicated earlier that we'd done it ourselves. We've worked together with our colleagues, and what we're hoping is that the other councils, Northampton Borough Council and South Northampton Council, will also agree what I'm asking you to agree, which is that we should, we should carry out a consultation on the draft STI, which is included in the papers. I'm not going to take you through the document, Chairman. I wouldn't hold you up from your exciting evening by doing that, but I think you can see that it is a joint plan, a joint document. And so the resolution before you tonight is that, subject to a similar agreement from South Northamptonshire and Northampton Borough Councils, consultation be undertaken on the draft statement of community involvement for West Northamptonshire. I believe the other councils will have reached their decision on this by the end of next week or thereabouts, so the consultation can then be put in hand, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Adam Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. A question to Councillor Chandler, if I may, just on the timelines of the consultations. On page 350 of our packs, it suggests that there will be a minimum of 6 weeks consultation at 3 separate stages. So looking at a period of approximately 4.5 months. Without any gaps between those distinct consultations. Do we have any idea when the first of those consultations will take place? How much time will elapse between each consultation, and therefore what prospects there are of this issue spilling into the new unitary as of the 1st of April. It seems optimistic to me to expect all of that to be wrapped up prior to vesting day on the 1st of April next year. But if my maths is correct, it may be just about feasible.
Yes, I'm not sure that I'm competent to give a proper answer to that, but I'm going to ask Simon if he will help me out here.
Chairman? I will assume the chairman is happy that I do so.
Yeah, I apologise. Yes, certainly, Simon, please respond.
Councillor Brown is absolutely right. Certainly one doesn't run local plan consultation stages immediately after each other, because there is a need to consider the response to the consultation, do further technical work, and then proceed. What is anticipated as we stand is that the first stage consultation will take place kicking off in January and closing therefore in March. There will then be a period where the results of that consultation are considered, and of course there will also during that period be elections, or we trust COVID will have received enough, there will be elections for the Western Pembrokeshire Council in its live form. And then sometime probably in the autumn, early autumn of next year, we would come to what would then be the executive of Western Pembrokeshire Council to propose a plan for pre-submission. And then the final, yes, pre-submission, and then on to submission thereafter. So you're talking probably 2022 before we're into the territory for adoption. In some ways, that's quite convenient, because one of the statutory duties laid on the new council is within its first 5 years, it must adopt a local development document, which covers the whole of its area. It's a pretty weak requirement, because actually it could adopt an SPD on, I don't know, roof coverings or something, and that would comply with the requirement. But the most obvious way of complying with the requirement is to adopt a new strategic plan covering the entire area, and this document will be an ideal opportunity for the new council to do precisely that.
Thank you, Simon. Chairman, if I may add to that, we had been advised in the past by the civil servants associated with this matter in MHCLG that the new council must produce its new strategic plan within 5 years of its vesting. So we know there's a lot of work ahead, Councillor Brown. We know that it's going to take a long time. We're not suggesting that that should stop us from carrying out a consultation on this statement of community involvement, because I think that is a necessary part of our process.
Councillor Brown, do you want to respond again?
Yeah, no, just to say that I'm more than happy with that. I thank Simon for his response, and I'm in full agreement with Councillor Chandler. We should proceed full steam ahead and lay the groundwork for the new council.
Thank you. It doesn't appear to be anyone else wishing to speak, so I'd like to put this paper before you to be resolved at this meeting. If you're in agreement to that, please do so by the raised hand. Okay, are there any opposed? And no abstentions? No, that looks like that was unanimous. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 9. Any urgent business, Chief Executive? Anything for us to deal with tonight?
No, Vice Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Well, first of all, can I thank you all? These are very tiresome, and you have to concentrate hard, and there's lots of work that goes in from officers to get all the papers together and to go through them. I just want you all to know, from whatever flag you fly under, your hard workers, members, does not go unnoticed, and without you, then we wouldn't have democracy, would we? And so I'm grateful for your input. Whether you agree or disagree, that's not the point. The point is that we get the work done at the council, and this is part of that process. So thank you for attendance tonight, and please have a pleasant evening, and I'm sure we'll see you at some stage. So, I now officially close the meeting.